Okay, when I decided to go off grid, I wasn't going to be one of those people that just accepts the fact that I'm going to have to read by candlelight and watch TV on a tablet because I've got just one little battery, and if the sun doesn't shine for a week, then I have no power. So I put a lot of effort and a lot of money into my mechanical system. So although I live off grid, I've got all the comforts of a home in the city. I thought I'd run through this with you real quick. These are 600 amp hour batteries. They're wired in series to get 48 volts. My system is a 48 volt system. And because of that, I got a 600 amp hour at 48 volt battery bank. This is a 4500 watt TrueSign inverter that does my charging, equalizing, and it also changes the power to 110 volt or 220, either one. Right here I have an extra charger that goes to a plug outside, that if I want to put this on a long trickle charge, I have a smaller generator that I can put out there, and a gallon of gas will run me all day long, or even a half a gallon of gas will run me all day long, and I can put a real slow trickle charge into this so I can get my 100% charge every month. This is my solar charger. It goes to a 2000 watt array outside. And this right here is my wind turbine charger, and it's a 2000 watt wind turbine that is also outside. Now, up there in the corner, that little tiny black box, that's my generator auto start. That thing is the coolest thing in the world. My first bank was only a 12 volt bank, and I had to monitor it constantly, 6, 7, 8 times a day. I had to watch, and when my voltage got down to 12.2 volts, then I had to start my generator to charge it back up. And then I had to remember the generator's running and monitor it to shut it off when it's finished. And there was a lot of times I completely forgot, and it just ran until it ran out of gas. You don't want to run a generator out of gas. I've been through a generator about every 6 to 8 months because I bought the cheaper generators, the $200, $400 generators. What that does is it monitors my bank. When it gets down to a prescribed point, it'll automatically turn the generator on. I don't even have to be here. I can be asleep. Sometimes I hear it turn on at 3 o'clock in the morning. It'll run until the battery bank is charged to a pre-described point, and then it'll automatically shut off. That little unit right there was $2,000, but it's worth every penny of it. This right here is a step-down transformer. It goes from 48 volts DC to 12 volts DC. My first bank was 12 volts, so all my lighting inside my house is 12 volts. 12 volt LEDs. So I put that in so I didn't have to replace all of those lights, and this here just drops the voltage down and takes it inside so it can handle it inside. Okay, this is my hot water setup. I heat my house, where one of my heat sources in my house is a drip oil stove. So this right here is a on-demand oil-fired water heater. I've also got an electric water heater. So I've got an 8,000 watt diesel generator outside, and when I'm charging my battery bank, as it gets higher up on the charge, the load drops, and it can drop really low. Because of that, I've added the electric water heater so I can put a bigger load on the generator to keep it up above 50%. And to control all of that, I've got relays down here. And I've got a switch here where if I switch it one direction, the extra power that I need to use to keep my generator load up high goes into the water heater, and it preheats the water before it goes into the on-demand. That way this doesn't have to use near as much fuel to get that temperature rise that I need to the usable temperature. And if I switch it the other direction, then it goes to an outlet inside the house that I have designated for space heaters. The way this system works is all automatic. I don't have to do anything except for tell it where I want it to go, where I want the power to go. I've got another video on there called generator dump load. I don't know what else to call it, but it's the ability to put more of a load on your generator so that it doesn't do what I believe is called wet stacking. It's hard on the regulator, it's hard on the generator, so you need to keep that load up above 50% when you're charging your batteries. That's really hard to do. If you go in and look at the generator dump load video, it'll give you the schematics for this, how it works, the theory behind it, and it's worked really good for me. And I hope something like this might be helpful to you. Okay, this is where my well water comes in. Of course, I've got my pressure tank, and I've got here what I call an oxidation tank. Now, my water coming out of the ground is as pure as any bottled water. The only problem is it's a little bit high in iron. Iron is not a health risk, but it's hard on the faucets and the plumbing and sinks and showers. It'll turn them all orange. So I want to get rid of as much iron as I can. When I bring my water out of the well and it's introduced to oxygen, then those dissolved solids will end up oxidizing or rusting. My water can come in here crystal clear, but after it sits here for a day or two, it'll start turning orange, and over time it can get really ugly orange. But that's what I want it to do, because once those dissolved metals oxidize, then they can go through this filter right here, and it makes it a lot easier to take them out. This tank here is set up with 2 float switches in it. When it drops down below half full, it'll turn the well pump on outside, and it'll fill it up until it's, a few inches from the top. I've put together a system here. It looks like a bunch of wires, but I've got several different relays and stuff like that in it. I have it all set up so that I can bypass anything in it. I can turn anything off, or I can turn anything to automatic, which would be the well pump, the house pump. I can redirect the water. Once a week, I flush this oxidation tank out because the water starts to get yellow, and I just don't want it to stain the tank up and end up, being an issue. So I drain this out, and these switches here allow me to bypass everything, so I can drain it out real fast. Only takes 10 or 15 minutes to rinse it out. I can shut my well pump off outside so it doesn't turn on when this gets too low. And then once a month I drain my well by redirecting the water outside into the yard and just leave it on all night long. There's a float switch in the well, so if the well drops to a certain point, it'll stop the pump and it'll wait until it fills back up. My well is considered a seep well. I'm only down about 10 or 12 feet because that's where the best water is here. And it's in the muskeg, which is actually a wetlands. People that go lower than that usually end up with a lot worse iron than what I've got. And those that don't have iron can end up with cyanide. So me drawing my well water off the muskeg. It's nice and clean, and other than being a little high in iron, it's perfect water. But the system's worked well. Now everything I've done in my cabin, I've set it up so that one, since I'm providing the utilities, I want to make sure there's enough there that I don't have to do without. You know, I have everything that a house in the city has. I have all the comforts. Everything is all designed and set up to be all automatic running. I don't have to monitor anything. I don't have to watch anything. Of course I do. I come out and look at stuff and make sure everything's fine, but I usually don't know there's anything wrong with it until something stops working. And unfortunately, when you're doing your own utilities, that's a common problem. And it usually happens when it's single digit temperatures outside and you've got 30-mile-an-hour winds and you've got to be outside fixing something. But I got tired my first few years. I got tired of monitoring everything and checking everything and making sure everything's working good. So over the 3 years after that, I made it a point to make everything as automatic as possible. The only thing I have left to do in here is to put in alarms, so that if something is giving me an issue before it goes too far, then it'll send off an alarm. And for an example, I have an extra float switch in this tank here because I've had the top float switch that's supposed to shut the pump off not work. So I have a secondary backup. What happens if both of these fail is this tank will overfill and it'll flood my floor in my mechanical room. So one of the first things I'm going to do is get a water sensor with an alarm on it, so that if this thing overfills, the alarm will go off. And if I'm in watching TV, I can't hear it flooding, but I'll hear an alarm go off and I can come out here and shut the well pump off. So there's there's a few alarms I could put in, and that's what I plan on doing in the future. I hope this was informative.